All right, be on your best behavior, everyone.
Oh, yep.
It's Jane. Hello.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
can you just wave over?
Hello.
Hello. How-
What's up?
I saw Jane. I'm like, it's either Jane or Julian or Jean or. Hey, there we go.
So many. Oh,
Wonderful. How you been, Jane?
we'll get started in about 2
Busy.
minutes.
That's fair.
How about you guys?
Busy.
Yeah, ditto.
I'm still at work.
I was gonna say, it looks like you're still at work. True story.
I am still at work. I
Did you
am.
win a World Cup trophy?
It's that time of year.
Right. It does look like a World Cup trophy. What's
Just gray. Yeah.
what's that like trophy thing up here?
Me?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an angel.
Ooh.
Oh, we're just heathen. We don't recognize angels. We
I
think family trophies.
From far away, it genuinely looks like.
have lots of angels in here, thank goodness.
Oh,
Yeah. Making sure you don't reach for any
oh.
snacks, right?
Oh, I won't go that far.
Like a guardian angel over the vending machine at work.
Exactly.
That's kind of funny, actually.
Love it.
Oh,
Going live. There we go. Live stream.
all right.
Oh, beautiful.
We got all of it. Well, all righty, ladies and gentlemen. So today what we're going to be doing is first we'll do a Q&A if anybody has anything that they heard or want to talk about or have questions on. And then after that, we have 4 things to go through if we get through that far. Basically, working out, why is it good for not only, losing weight, getting strong, why, what can I do with stress? And then the second thing will be like 5 tips for conquering emotional eating, which were big for me. And then we're going to talk about my favorite post-workout drink. And then we're going to talk about semaglutide because everybody's talking about semaglutide, so you might as well get our opinion on it. So semaglutide, also known as Ozempic, also known as
Waco.
3 or 4. Yeah, what's that? What's that one? The Wegovy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny is there's also this one they don't talk about nearly as much, by trizepatide, which is the more powerful version of semaglutide. But anyway, we can talk about that if we get to it. It's also exponentially more expensive.
Makes sense.
But anyway, all right. So with that said, questions, comments, or concerns? Anything you guys want to talk about or have a question on?
It can be on any topic.
Kellen, how do you get your hair to be so luscious?
How much moisture do you use?
This much. Yeah. All right. So first up, so Noah, what are your thoughts if you have a real bad day and you're like, man, I'm super stressed, I'm burnt out. What do you do? Like in regards, let's say you have a planned workout. Do you skip it? Do you modify it? Do you do it as planned? What's your opinion on that? What do you do?
Man, there's a lot to that, which I love. Depends on how bad the day is, or if there's an illness involved, or if there's a danger.
Yeah.
Typically, if it's purely psychological, I convince myself to just do like 1 or 2 sets of something I enjoy. So like, let's say it's leg day and I'm like, I'm gonna be absolutely miserable, but I know I added some bicep curls at the end of it. I'm gonna start with the curls, maybe do 2 sets. By the time I finish those, I'm like, this isn't so bad. Let me try like a warm-up set of squats. And the most important thing is I give myself permission to stop at any point in time. And I won't beat myself up. So I allow myself to do that. And typically 9 times out of 10, 2 or 3 sets into it, I'm warmed up, I'm ready to go. I'm like, this is great. I got my music going, sweet. I remember as many cues as I can to get me pumped up for it. So I have proper pre-workout meal, if there's anything like that, make sure I'm properly hydrated, making sure I have all my favorite songs on. I have a whole playlist dedicated to the gym. Everything I can to give me as much of a shot I can to having the best workout possible. And yeah, 9 times out of 10, that does it for me. There's also, to me, this might sound weird because I tend to be a weirdo in these regards, but to me, anytime I go into the gym feeling like crap, part of me is like, I want to prove to myself that even on my worst days, I can outperform like my best days. And so then when I come in on a good day, I'm like, this is the easiest thing ever. This is great. And so on the days where you don't feel like it, if you can prove yourself you can do it, it's almost like twice as much of a milestone for you to hit versus like an easy day that you checked off. And I've set some pretty good records on some really bad days. So that's like some preliminary stuff. But I can get in a lot more detail if you want as well after you hit it with yours.
Yeah, no. So likewise. So like it's very, very similar. So like there's a guy who played in the NFL, and the way he described it, it wasn't necessarily to working out, but it was the same philosophy like practice. And he said some days you just have to dig dirt. Like you might not move a ton of dirt, but you still went in there and you dig dirt. And he was speaking mainly to the psychological effect. And so like you, what I do is typically for me, the hardest part is just getting there. And like, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do my warm up or whatever it is. And if that's all she wrote, it's a W. And 9 times out of 10, honestly, it's probably more than that. If I just get there and I start, I'm good to go. And here's the thing, okay, how about this? What about, so physically you're fine, psychologically you're just super stressed over whatever's been going on, like, everything we've been going on at the studio the last like week or whatnot. So super stressed, run down, and then I cognitively, I know I need to work out because I know if I do, I'm going to feel exponentially better. I'm going to sleep better. I'm not going to be a jerk to my kids and my wife. What's your mindset there? What's your philosophy there?
I mean, totally agree. Especially if you've been doing it for a while and you tend to know. There's like, I forget where it's at, but there's a certain language that has 2 different words for wisdom. One is like knowledge and one is like experiential knowledge, also known as like kind of wisdom. And so one is like, okay, I cognitively know that if I were to work out, I'd feel better. A lot of people like that before they sign up, before they've been weightlifting or working out for a long period of time. Like when you experience it firsthand and you have so many days over a period of years where you're like, hey, I've been in this crap situation and I go work out, even if it's 20 minutes. And I find typically sometimes the more hardcore I go, the better I feel because the endorphins are there. It tends to reset really well. So since I have like years of anecdotes and data of me personally feeling better, that tends to be really powerful force, me being like, look, I know this will be worse if I don't do this. Let's do everything we can to do this. And part of it too, I think about it as well, is planning ahead, right? So even though you don't know you're gonna have a crap day, if every day you plan ahead to remove as much friction, as much difficulty getting there as possible, like having your workout clothes laid out, your gym bag already packed, your pre-workout set aside, your post-workout set aside, like everything you can to make it as easy as possible to get there to the gym or your home gym or whatever, that tends to go a very long way. And all those things add up over time to making it like the psychology of knowing you'll feel better, the psychology of planning ahead, the psychology of talking yourself through it, psychology of just convincing yourself to show up. All those little things add up to making it overcoming those really difficult days for me.
Yeah. And so 100%. And like, it was probably about a month ago, Beth and I got into, we hardly ever get into an actual argument, but I forget, honestly, this is how stupid it is. I don't remember what it was, but I remember like we were both not necessarily each other's favorite people at the time. And I was like, I was like, I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to think about it, but I was like, I'm just going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out, even though I didn't feel like it. I went, I worked out, and I came back and I was a completely different person. I could talk about it rationally, and we, made up the whole shebang. And that's really just how important it is. And like, to back it up with a little bit of science, what it said, like what studies show is that if you train for like 20 or 30 minutes of even just moderate exercise, is it significantly increases your mood, and to the point where it's on par with certain medications. And then what's cool is like I was listening to Mind Pump the other day with Sal, and what he was saying is that there's 2 tests that came out, and one shows that moderate exercise consistently when prescribed to someone who's battling depression is more effective. One study showed it's as effective, and then the other showed it's more effective than prescription drugs for battling depression. And so that's really how powerful it is. And so I guess the takeaway is is even if you don't feel like it, as long as like you have adequate sleep, you're healthy and whatnot, it's really just a psychological issue, and you're stressed, it is probably the best thing that you can get yourself to do to get in. And then the key takeaways are: one, cognitively knowing that; two, like Noah said that I liked, either you have the experiential knowledge, maybe you don't have that, but you have us to tell you that it will happen over time. You'll have those pillars. And so just give yourself permission to stop anytime. And then two, the hardest part is starting. And here's the thing. And I didn't come up with this. This isn't a quote, but it's paraphrased. I didn't come up with this idea. It's like the guy or the girl, I forget who it was, said, I've never not regretted going to a workout and finishing it. I've only regretted the workouts that I knew like that I didn't go to. He said it, they said it a lot cooler than that, but I was like, that was really good. And it's so true, because I have regretted some workouts that I didn't go to because I was too tired, I was too stressed, whatever, too busy. But I've never regretted a workout where I felt like I was too busy, too stressed, but I ended up going, and maybe even I only did half of it and left. I've never regretted that. Not once.
Oh yeah, true. Plus, setting very specific objective parameters goes a long way too. So that way you know, A, when you're pushing yourself too far, because I've definitely taken the other way where I should have rested and didn't. And B, well, and what that would look like actually, before I get into the next one, is instead of saying like, okay, I'm sick, no matter what, when I'm sick, I'm always going to work out. Instead of being like, okay, I know the difference between like a very light cold, or I'm just like have some allergies or something, or if I'm like literally bedridden, you probably shouldn't work out if you're bedridden. Rule of thumb is if it's below your neck, probably don't want to be working out. Above the neck, with some exceptions, can be pretty fine. But setting objective measures helps you to not beat yourself up when you do skip the workouts when you should, and also to reward yourself when you stick with it, even though it's difficult. And those are equally as important, because you don't want to spend the next 3 days wallowing in self-pity and be like, oh, I'm the worst person ever, I'll never do this. If you skipped a day, you should have. So even something like, hey, if I know I'm going to get, if because of this workout, I'll get less than 5 hours of sleep, I don't work out. Or because XYZ, whatever happens with your schedule, setting aside objective measures. If I worked, I don't know, 16 hours today, I won't do it. If I work more than 12 hours, little stuff like that can go a long way to help improve that relationship with yourself over time. And then I like what Kellen said too, where, yeah, it's better than any antidepressant. Also, yoga in particular, fun fact, is even better. It's better than any antidepressant, anything they found, because it's forced mindfulness and exercise all in one. And also, something that's cool is that your influence over your nervous system goes both ways, to where, like, let's say you're super, super nervous and stressed, you're gonna get really, really shallow breathing. If you take someone who's not stressing and get them to breathe really, really shallow and really, really quick, they'll experience psychological symptoms of feeling stressed. So if you take them through movement patterns and breathing, kind of like in yoga, where it's very long, relaxed, drawn out, you're going to slow down the sympathetic nervous system, go more parasympathetic, and it'll actually psychologically calm you down too. So you can kind of force yourself into the movement patterns of someone who isn't stressed, and it'll make you less stressed, anxious, frustrated, all that good stuff.
And so that's like box breathing, like they do with the SEALs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like when I was at OCS with the Marine Corps, they taught us, before it was a cool thing, box breathing, where essentially you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, let it out for 4 seconds, and then keep it out for 4 seconds, and that completes a cycle. Which is, that's exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's the way to basically you're dictating how your central nervous system is responding, which is cool. Mm-hmm. Well, cool. So any questions, comments, or on that? Stress, working out, when shouldn't I? Maybe like, do you want a quote unquote, we could throw together kind of a short rubric. Any questions on that?
Or anecdotes.
More anecdotes. Yeah. What have you noticed when you feel stressed? That's a great question. None?
Wow. You're just so
yeah, well, that's exactly it. All right. So now, okay, the second thing we're going to talk about is how to conquer emotional eating. This is very much a thing for me. So Noah, have you struggled with emotional eating? You probably do just the opposite, is my assumption.
A little bit of both. Pretty much it's No, I just say yes. It affects my eating, so I would say yes. Typically, it causes me to eat less.
Yeah.
By the time I notice eating more, it's one of two things. Either I'm so stressed and working so much that I just skip meals and don't even notice,
Mm,
or like if there's like a really difficult conversation coming up or something I'm really like anxious about, then like I just get nauseous and like I can't keep anything down. Or if it's a bunch of busy work, that's just like a ton, and I just like want an excuse to go away. Because pretty much the only breaks I would have for a lot of periods of times in my life was when I would eat and cook something, and that's like a universally accepted excuse for a break. So for me,
uh-huh.
like when it's a bunch of like emotionally difficult stuff, I don't need it at all. When it's a bunch of busy work that's just like really time consuming and I'm like procrastinating on it, then I kind of like use food as an excuse not to work for a little bit. So I'm like, well, I can't
Yeah.
type while I'm eating. It's like I guess I'll pull up like a YouTube video and eat something. So that's mostly my experience with it.
Yeah. I I s- I eat when I'm happy. I eat when I'm sad. I eat when I'm stressed. I eat when I eat. My default is eat and food, and I don't even know I don't even know when that started. The my first memory of eating until I felt stuffed, and that became a pattern of my life when I was like 4 or 5. My mom had a daycare in Frenchtown, Montana, and she made hot dogs. And for whatever, and it was in bread hot dogs, like the worst, but I thought it was delicious with lots of ketchup. And I remember eating it and being like, wow, this tastes so good. And I think, as crazy as this sounds, I think I had 6 hot dogs at like 4 or 5. And I know, and there isn't a big traumatic, not that I'm aware of a big traumatic event or anything like that. Like I have one client when he was 6, his mom died, and that night, his brother caught him eating butter out of the refrigerator. Um, so I never, and he has a binge eating disorder, emotional eating disorder. But for me, I just remember that's my first like real memory of I was happy. Food gave me so much joy. It felt so good. And then, you know how most people are like when they feel stuffed, it was discomfort. It gave me a lot of peace. And unfortunately, that just became a pattern. And so I was never happy. I was never satisfied when I ate until I felt like stuffed and full. And so anything other than that as so like even when I snacked, if I was going to snack, I wanted to feel stuff. I honestly, I still do. So basically it's bad. And so that was always been my biggest struggle. And so like when I was 10, I weighed more when I was 10 than I do now. I was 220, 225. I remember getting on the scale in Florida before we moved to Brazil, and I was 225. And honestly, then I just started. And at 11, I contemplated suicide. Like honestly, I had no idea of like how I would do it. But I was like, man, I think I would be better if I were dead, which is really sad. But that's like how powerful emotional eating can control, at least controlled me. And then, ironically enough, how did I cope with that after I had those thoughts? Ice cream. Um, so anyway, long story short, fast forward. This is an ongoing battle I've had my entire life. Um, and these 5 things have been the 5 most important ways that I have been able to manage it. Have I say I have conquered emotional eating? No, but I have gotten a lot better at like recognizing the warning signs and then being able a little bit better to stop me. And the first is basically is balanced meals. So if I start eating something or if I don't plan my eating, it's so much easier for me to wake up or whatever and just be like, well, I'm gonna make this. Oh, you know what would go good with this? This would go good with this. Oh, you know what else would be good? Some chocolate milk. And I just keep adding and adding, adding. And then if I don't stink and log it, cognitively, like I've logged my food for so long, I have a really good idea of how much I'm eating, but I kind of suppress that and put it away. So for me, what's so important is one, know what I'm going to eat beforehand. And by that, I mean, what's my protein source? Because that's going to be the star. If I only eat one thing, it's going to be that protein source. Okay, here's my protein source. Let's say eggs. I'm going to have 5 eggs. I know for some of you, that's a lot of eggs. For some of us, it's not so much. Okay, so I'm going to have my 4 or 5 eggs. All right. What's going to go good with my eggs? I'm going to have a piece of toast. Can I have 2 pieces of toast? I don't know. Let me check. Plug it in. And then I do 3 meals that way. typically, unless I'm doing intermittent fasting. Sometimes I do that, and then it's a little bit different. But long story short, is the number one thing is I have to do is I need to plan my balanced meals, and I need to have the discipline to log it. And that's an accountability piece for me, because if I wake up and I say, you know what, I'm on vacation or whatever it is, and I'm not going to log my food, 9 times out of 10, those 5 eggs turn into 5 eggs, 3 or 4 pieces of toast, maybe a bagel, and then I'm going to have some. Oh well, I'm on vacation. I might as well have a donut or a cinnamon roll with it, and it just morphs into a 500-calorie meal, becomes 1,200 at a blink of an eye, and that's just breakfast. Do you have any thoughts on that before I go to number 2?
I mean, you pretty much said it very well. I mean, planning ahead, especially eating out too. I find a lot of that happens a lot with clients where I'm like, dude, literally, like I make a cheat sheet and I send it out. I'm like, if you go to any of these 15 major chains, here's what you get off the menu. That way you don't have to think about it. Because if you go up and you're like pulling up to the window to order and you already know, and it's just like, boom, I'm sticking to the plan, versus looking and deciding, that's two very different things. Anyone who's gone to the grocery store hungry knows exactly what I'm talking about. You start perusing instead of just going off the grocery list. So that's a huge thing. So yeah, balanced meals, and obviously sticking with a protein source, veggies, building it around those. Because if you start falling into the wayside of, oh, I'm going to have all the highly palatable and not filling at all foods, it's easy to have a ton more of those. And at the top of all of this will be mindfulness and self-awareness. Because Kellen even mentioned, he's like, well, I catch myself doing this, or I note that this is happening. That's all going to be the long-term solution to all of this. Because otherwise it can be a spiral where you're like, oh, to hell with it. I already had one thing off the meal plan. I'm going to beat myself up. I feel terrible. Oh, I don't have a way of regulating my negative emotions, so I'm going to eat even more.
100%. I just ate a whole meat lovers pizza. Man, I feel like crap about myself. Oh, there's like 3 donuts left over from breakfast. I might as well kill those 2. 100%. 100%. And also, so I wanted, like you talked about the restaurant thing. So I forget what study it was, but a simple tip, it's easier said than done, but I still found it interesting, is whoever orders first at the table often sets the tone of how healthy a meal is going to be for the table. So if the first person to orders something that's relatively healthy, the total calories for the table goes down collectively like by 200 or 300 calories. How crazy is that? And the vice versa is also true. If the first person orders something that's like, just like nachos or something like ridiculous, everybody tends to order something a little bit more ridiculous. How crazy. So anyway, the application to that is, if you can, 1, have a plan and know what you're going to order ahead of time. And then 2, without being rude, try to be the first one to order. And it'll reinforce your decision. And so you don't have a chance to be like, oh, that sounds good, and jump back. But 2, you're implicitly like leading the group to healthier choices, which I found fascinating.
Absolutely.
And then any questions on that before we get to the second point? So that was basically
what were you saying about, Noah, when you were saying that, how do you stop yourself from, once you've done something that's kind of off the beaten path of what you should be doing, that you don't let yourself just go out into the forest foraging for the rest of the night?
Oh, of course. Well, at first I'd say you're definitely not alone. So many clients come to me, they're like, oh, like I must be the only person. Like, no. This is like a pretty universal reaction. And it's like, at the end of it is both awareness and ability to do something with that awareness. So literally even like sit down one day and take a note of like, okay, when I'm stressed, what makes me feel better? When I'm sad, what makes me feel better? And that's one thing that I do lament, that so much of traditions, at least in America, is somewhat related to food. Like, if you feel bad, let's go out to eat. Oh, you graduated? Let's take you out to dinner. Oh, you're visiting family? Oh, let's go have dinner. Oh, it's your birthday? Let's make a cake. Like, everything's built around very high calorie dense activities. Activities such as eating, but
food. Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. And so first it comes with mindfulness. So literally a really powerful way to practice mindfulness is go to a restaurant and order something you don't like on purpose. And literally just like, with as much awareness as possible, focus on the sensation, the texture, how it tastes, note how you're reacting. Because the second you start observing something, you remove yourself from who you identify with the symptoms and the emotions. Because like, let's say you're like, oh, like let's say I'm Jane. You're like, oh, Jane is feeling really stressed right now. The second you observe yourself, it removes you from the situation, and you'll notice that the power of the emotion is not quite as severe. If you're looking for books, I don't know if you're there for it, Jane, but The Power of Now, it's a pretty powerful one that goes through like kind of like the philosophy behind it. And then if you're looking for more practical steps, it's The Mind Illuminated. Feel free to message me and I can send links to those too. But both those are really, really good books for that, through meditation and also the philosophical side of understanding it. So those are two things. So stopping yourself, practicing mindfulness throughout the day, gets you to the point where then you can catch yourself in the middle of it. Then you then have the point to say, okay, I'm stressed. I'm halfway through a pizza. Will I feel better if I finish the pizza? Oftentimes, if you take a second just to like sit back, maybe drink a glass of water, you're like, I actually don't enjoy this fifth slice as much as the first slice, right? And that's not even talking yourself out of it. You're just becoming aware of it. Like the study I cite 1,000 times, where they took smokers. They had some get the patch, they had some get a pouch, they had some just quit cold turkey, and they had some where all they told them to do was pay really, really close attention. You're inhaling, the taste of the smoke, how it feels going down your throat. When you're exhaling, like being really mindful, asking themselves questions like, do I enjoy this? Am I here just for social reasons? Is this something I want to continue doing? And the group that was most successful with quitting was the mindful ones. Because then you're not talking yourself out of it, you're just being honest and taking notes. Because so many times when I have meals like that, the second I sit down and like take a second, sorry, I'm letting people in too. The second I sit down and take a second to like just pay attention, I'm like, dude, I'm halfway through this milkshake and I can't even like taste it anymore. Like my tongue is numb, like I don't enjoy this. And then there's another thing your brain could do to be like, oh, some cost fallacy, like I need to like finish it. It's like, oh, well, it's being wasteful, Noah. It's like you need to finish that milkshake, otherwise you're a bad person. And like then that was another one I had to work through, right? So until the point where I could catch it and like see that thought coming and interact with it in a healthful way of like, okay, is this real? Like, is this thought true? Because your thoughts aren't facts. So pay attention to your reaction during each step of the way. Pay attention to how you're feeling. So I'd recommend even grounding exercises. So perhaps you start doing a practice where halfway through a meal, you pick out 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, and then 1 thing you, oh wait, no, 5 things you can touch, 4 things you can see, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can hear, 1 thing you can, I missed one, didn't I? 5 senses: taste, touch, smell, hear, sight. So easiest touch. Okay, so 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can hear.
Taste.
Taste. Yeah, I thought I said taste. Okay, cool. Yeah, 1 thing you can taste. So bring yourself down to the sensations. So literally, like for me, what it looked like now is to be like, okay, well, I am sitting in my chair. I can feel the weight of my butt on the chair. I can feel the weight of my hands on either the mouse or the keyboard. And when you do that, it kind of slows it down. And you're not just like a passenger in your emotions. You're kind of watching them happen. And that'll let things slow down for you. Then you can make the decision of, okay, now that you've been mindful and you catch yourself in the act, the things you've written down previously of what makes you feel better when I'm anxious or tired or stressed, or methods of self-soothing through negative emotion, pull those out. So 1 is identifying, stopping it. 1 is pulling those out and making that change. Because that'll be much better than, and you'll feel much better than if you just eat the rest of the meal. So it's a very short-term solution to those negative emotions. I recommend therapy for anyone and everyone, and they can talk you through better methods of self-soothing. They might be towards the individual, but like for me, honestly, even like working out or like going to soccer are like 2 of the best things for me ever. Another one is like journaling, or just like honestly going out and taking a walk. Identifying those things and having them as kind of like your arsenal will be really useful. I hope that helps a little bit. I know I got off track with the senses, but
No, that was good.
Thank you.
of course, appreciate it.
Yeah, and then that honestly that ties right into the second thing, which is physical activity. So like if I can be hungry, I can have a craving, I can be upset, whatever you have it, whatever the emotion is that I'm dealing with. And like when I was having an argument with Bess, yeah, I know if I go do that, that's something that's physically active. 9 times out of 10, I'm no longer hungry. I forget about the craving, and it's an afterthought.
Mhm.
Just because it's just a simple, it's a way to cope with whatever you're actually going through. At least for me. I mean, that kind of goes right through. We kind of nailed it. It really comes back to honestly everything that Noah talked about right there is a great synopsis of why we want to be emotional leaders and in how to cope and deal with it. And the only twist I would put on it from a personal standpoint that's helped me is I think about what is the most loving thing I can do for myself, for my body at this time. What's the most God honoring thing I can do? And instead of seeking to worship him with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my might, what I choose to do instead is I'm going to engorge myself so that I feel better to please me, not please him. And what is the most God honoring thing I can do is to put this down. That helps me based off of how I was raised and what I believe there. But that also, that mindset shift for me has helped a lot.
Ooh, another really
because when I do go ahead.
All right, go ahead. You finish.
So like, because when I do overeat, I'm harming myself. It isn't good for me. And a lot of times when I'm in the middle of emotional eating and binging, I'm trying to cope with something, right? Generally a negative emotion, and it's a pinprick in time. But ultimately, what I'm doing is bad for me. It's damaging my relationship with myself, with others, and ultimately with God. And so when I have that realization and I really think about that, it is much easier and simpler for me to turn from that behavior. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I was gonna say another way of thinking of it too, that helped me a lot was treat yourself like a friend that you care about and genuinely want the best for.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Honestly, because people treat themselves much worse than everyone else. I'll hear people the way they talk about themselves, and I'm like, if your friend talked to you that way, would that be normal to you? And they're like, no, that'd be terrible. I'm like, okay, so like, why are you so different than your friend? Like, what makes you the exception? And they're like, because no one calls me out of my internal monologue. And again, that's mindfulness procedure.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, because you won't even catch yourself having that monologue if you're not mindful with it. So that's where I'm saying mindfulness precedes all sorts of treatment and solutions with this. And so if you were, let's say, kind of on your way towards a binge halfway through a pizza, your friend was, and you walked in on them, would you berate them and yell at them and tell them they're terrible and they might as well just eat the rest of the day and give up on their future plans of fitness and health? Or would you walk up to them and be like, hey, we had half the pizza. That's fine. We can't undo that. I'm glad you got to enjoy it. Maybe we save the rest for later, or we give it away. Is there something else we could do that'll make you feel better? Maybe have a conversation about it. You can have a conversation with yourself. It's called journaling or meditation or so many things you can do. And so that really flips the switch for so much. Yeah, that flips the switch for so much because it really takes you out of it. Because for me, I definitely so much perfectionistic tendencies, such a terrible internal dialogue. And I see that come up with a lot of my clients too. I talk to them, and that like one thing like blew out of proportion because then you remove yourself from, again, you're taking one level of analysis away, which means you don't identify with those negative thoughts, and you realize you're not those thoughts. Then you can interact with them in a productive way. So I can't stress enough how game changing that can be.
Hey Noah.
Yeah, what's up, Keegan?
Hey, taking dogs for a walk. One thing my friend told me that it really stuck was my body's not a garbage can. So like I struggle with like, I don't like wasting food. Like I'll just eat the rest of it but my body's not a garbage can. I don't need to eat the rest of it just because like my body's more important than finishing, whatever it is. But so just wanted to throw that up there.
I love it.
No, that's good. No, that's really good. Because like, I don't know, like, and it was funny because Noah, instead, like, did you see, like, we innately, whatever, don't want to say, just toss it out. He said we can save it for later. We can give it away. The third option was we can just toss it. We don't have to keep it. But like, intrinsically, we just hate the idea of quote unquote wasting something when that's a mindset. I mean, unless we're like severely deficient and starving for food, chances are in a first world country, there's lots of other food we have access to. It's what we choose to eat. But that's a whole nother topic. But I thought that was interesting. She said that, and I noticed your speech pattern there, and I was like, oh, but it's the same. No, ditto for me. Okay.
Right. Well, the other thing
Um,
too is half the time when you're like saying that to yourself, even if you stop right then and there, what are the chances you're going to get that exact meal and bring it to someone else in need and give it to them? Like, no matter what, whether you're eating or throwing it away, it, like that's not. So it's just like something your brain cooks up to like help you continue eating.
which is crazy. Right? All right, and then the other two, so we can hit the other stuff, aren't as deep, but they're as effective. So for me, staying hydrated, and by staying hydrated, I mean for me it was if I drink tons of water throughout the day, it helps me exponentially eat way less food. So typically, like I'm 220 ish, so I typically have at least like 150 to 180 ounces of water a day. So just pounding it. And that makes it a lot easier for me. Instead of reaching for something to snack on, I impulsively grab something to drink. And it helps me. And over time, I will say this caveat: over time, it's really helped me distinguish the difference between hunger and being thirsty, or just wanting something to do and be busy. So I can nurse a thing of water to the point where, honestly, a lot of times people thought I was diabetic when I was younger because I was drinking so much water. Like I tested like 3 or 4 times because they're like, he has to be diabetic. He drinks so much water. And I never told me, but like I was kind of embarrassed when I was younger to be like, no, I do this so that I don't overeat as much. And then the third one kind of tied into a balanced meals. Meal planning is huge. And the more consistent, and like it doesn't, you don't have to be a Nazi about it. Like meal planning for me is as simple, honestly, as this. This is what Beth and I do. Typically on Sunday evening is we just choose what is going to be our protein source for dinner. And that's, I mean, that's what's going to be the protein source. And then, okay, what's going to be the starch or the vegetable or whatever. But you start with your star and you build out from there. And then what Beth does is she'll just make a double portion of that the night. She hates leftovers, so I'm really blessed. She makes something new almost every day. So I'm super spoiled there. But and then she makes double food, and then I just have it for honestly either breakfast sometimes or lunch the next day. And that helps me a ton. It's already pre-portioned, you're good to go. And then we've talked about this a ton. And Noah's done really good with it. Is the third or the last thing, the fifth thing is good sleep, getting enough hours of sleep. And this is new to me, but in the last, like, I feel like the last 3 weeks, something that I've heard from multiple people on podcasts, Feel Mind Pump, and I think even Joe Rogan, is people are talking about, like, before it was get 7 to 8 hours was like a big thing. Now they're saying even if you get 7 to 8 hours, it's good, but it doesn't matter. What you need to get is 3 to 4 hours of deep REM sleep. Have you heard that recently, Noah?
Yeah, where quality of sleep matters a ton. And I think they just have better numbers for it. So that's why it's coming out like more like consistent of the actual numbers. But yeah, quality of sleep is just as if not more important than quality or quantity of sleep.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of reassuring because typically I only get like, if I get 6, it's amazing. Normally I'm like between 5, if not a little bit less. That being said, though, I like my deep sleep 9 times out of 10 is super good, and I get there super fast. So maybe I won't die when I'm super young. The sleep thing is one of the biggest holes in my fitness game. But before we go to the next topic, anything else in regards to emotional eating that we talked about? Any questions or anecdotes or anything like that?
Now I'm gonna use the restroom real quick, Kellen, while we wait for them.
All right, no worries. Don't worry. This one's pretty easy. So this one's a little more lighthearted. And
Wait. Hey, Kellen.
go ahead. Yeah.
So how do you know how much deep sleep you get? Is that like a Fitbit, or because my REM sleep on a Fitbit is, I don't know, I might get 43 minutes. I think the most I've ever seen on there is like an hour and a half, maybe.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's not good.
But I think different watches record that
Better.
more accurately. I don't know what's most accurate, but my Fitbit gives me more deep sleep and less REM sleep than like Mandy's Apple Watch. Hers are almost opposite.
Yeah. So it's so funny. I just listened to a podcast from Ben Greenfield where they had some sleep expert on and they rated the different apps. And I don't remember the ratings off the top of my head, but I believe for sleep, because they did categories of like, this is the best one for, invariable heart rate. This is the best one for sleep and whatever. But basically the two best ones overall were the Whoop strap, which is what I have used in the past, which I really like. But then I started doing jujitsu, and it's a pain to wear. And the second one, the Aura Ring. Have you guys heard of that one? The Aura Ring.
No.
That one's supposed to be really good. But I'd have to look at the podcast because they broke it down and it was pretty cool, and they broke it down into sections. But I do know, unfortunately, the Fitbit was the lowest ranking out of all of them.
For sleeping. So maybe I feel like it's
overall,
underestimating my REM sleep and maybe overestimating the deep sleep. I think some of that deep sleep is REM sleep, but it's in no way 2, 3, 4 hours.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like you want to get 3 or 4. I feel fairly confident.
I was thinking it was also like maybe 25% REM and 25% deep sleep, but I don't know. I'd have to look at that again.
Yeah, I don't have the exact figures honestly memorized, just to be honest. I just knew that like the outcome or what they were talking about is you want to get like, I believe is 3 to 4. And if you can do that, you'll have the same benefit as if you slept well for 7 to 8.
Oh,
and I remember that sticking out because I was like, oh, maybe I'm not going to die as young as I think I'm going to die. Because like if you don't do that, like typically what's studied, if you don't get 7 to 8 hours, it like decreases your lifespan significantly, like 10 years. And so it's worth the effort to try to do that better. Anything else in regards to that? Cool. All right. And so this next topic is a little more lighthearted, but if you eat the reason this came up is if you eat predominantly whole foods, like I typically do, like 90% of my diet is whole foods. It makes me feel better. It makes it so that I'll innately eat less calories, so on and so forth. The only difference is, and if you work out even a little bit, your sodium levels are really, really low. Okay. And like the prescription, like universally, like 2,000 calories, they say you need, is like 2,000, what is it? Not milligrams. Is it milligrams? What is it? How do they measure salt?
Milligrams.
But whatever it is, what is it? Milligrams?
Pretty sure.
Yeah. 2,000 or whatever that's nowhere near how much you need if you're even a moderately physically active person who drinks a lot of water, because basically you just pee it out or you use it up. And what would happen is you become nauseous and you get the shakes. And then what you think is, or what I would think until I learned about this is, ooh, my blood sugar is really, really low. I need to eat some simple carbohydrate, like a banana or whatever, to make me feel better. So if you're trying to lose weight or you're already kind of a chunky guy or that's something you struggle with, it's not a good thing. So from Mind Pump, they actually have this, they don't sell it, but I heard them talking about it. It's called LMNT, literally. So like LMNT. And it's that when like element is what it's called, but it's LMNT. And what it is, it's a sodium potassium electrolyte drink. And sodium and electrolyte aren't synonymous, but they're pretty much synonymous. And it's in the right quantities where the first thing I do, you can take it for pre-workout, but I also take it first thing in the morning, because if I don't, what I've noticed is I will feel nauseous and get sick to my stomach if I don't. So I highly suggest you check that out, especially if you're tired or nauseous during a workout, or like for me, it'd be like a couple, like after a workout, I start feeling nauseous. Do you have any tips or tricks on that, Noah? Oh, actually, I had one client who would get nauseous almost every time after she worked out. And I told her about sodium. This is before I knew about LMNT. And what she did that she said works wonders for her, and I'm not this hardcore, she would get Himalayan like chunks of rock salt, cubes, and she would stick it under her tongue. And she said within 5 minutes, she was right as rain. And that's her thing. So and now essentially after she works out, she gets like a little like cube of sodium, literal Himalayan salt, and puts it under her tongue and drinks some water. So don't knock it till you try it. It's pretty stinking good. No, you got anything on that or comments?
Covered most of it. Yeah, people really underestimate, and I like what you mentioned of once you go adopt a whole foods based diet, it's really easy to have a sodium deficiency because literally all the foods that are processed are just loaded with salt, sugar, fats to make them as palatable as possible, or the foods that you're eating out with. So when you cut those out, it tends to go tends to go down pretty dang quick. And then yeah, most of the estimates they have for all those recommendations are not very good. The ones the U.S. government came up with through 2,000 milligrams is a very, very underestimate. And then yeah, I mean, yeah, that one's a pretty good one. They actually have all the like studies and science behind it and the portions of the ingredients listed on the site, which I really like. So that's why I highly recommend them because a lot of them you'll find they either attach it to a pre-workout or they like, for instance, Gatorade is like famously one of the most famous like, oh, like electrolyte supporting drinks, which they're just like a little bit of salt and then a ton of sugar.
Yeah.
And so this is, Kellen said it rates as like
Basically.
7 out of 10 for taste. Whereas
Yeah, true. Yeah, sorry. Yes, that is a caveat. It doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't taste delicious either. So, like, it's not bad, but like, don't think you're gonna. It's like, oh, this is just like Gatorade because it's definitely not that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, keep an eye out for if you have like brain fog, if you're feeling dizzy, nauseous, your strength's going down in the workouts. Those are symptoms kind of keep an eye out for. Or if like you're drinking a ton of water, but you're just not retaining any of it and you're just peeing like crazy, crazy amounts. That was the thing that tipped off me. So I'd literally just take like a pinch of salt like 2 or 3 times a day and just knock it back.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
That's just how the way I have to do it. I can't do salt water or anything, so I'll
I
try.
can't do salt water either, man.
Yeah, gross.
Like it gags me.
Yeah.
Like I will physically vomit. I can't even do Alka-Seltzer Plus, man.
Yeah, terrible.
Hey, Kellen.
Yeah.
The LMNT, do you know how it compares to the liquid IV? I know it's got.
I haven't compared to the IV. Let me real quick.
Okay, because that's what I've been doing. Just kind of in the mornings or throughout the day to increase more sodium. I remember having that conversation like a month or so ago with you guys.
Have you noticed a difference?
Yes, I feel more like in a weird, like my body feels more fluid, like it can like move a little easier, if that makes sense. Like I do feel more hydrated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the biggest difference right there.
But I know I'm assuming, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a lot of sodium. I just didn't know if it was in the same wheelhouse.
Placebo is also a hell of a drug, so I do appreciate you double checking.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull up the nutrition label.
Right? Yeah, their website just does not have the nutrition label ready.
Oh, that's interesting.
Go to Amazon.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Here, I'll look at Amazon. They'll have it listed.
A liquid IV.
Yeah.
I have the strawberry multiplier. The strawberry liquid IV has 110 milligrams per tube per stick.
Of what?
If you
Of sodium?
drank the whole thing. Sodium.
Only 100 milligrams. Yeah, so that's not a lot.
510 per.
Okay, that's
Well,
better.
in addition to your food, maybe if you drank 510 milligrams, or if you, I don't know, drank a couple of them in a day. But a stick that you add to a bottle of water is 500 grams of sodium.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, so one of the sticks goes, so like Element T is 600. So that, it sounds like it's more. It's a lot expensive, which surprises me. But yeah, no. All I can say, Keegan, is I haven't tried liquid IV, but if you want to try Element T and do a compare and contrast, and then report back. You want to be a
Okay. Can I also get that on Amazon? It's my favorite
So,
store.
yeah, mine too. Yes, you can. All right, I finally found it. There we go.
Thank you.
So potassium has 380 milligrams, which is good. And then where's the sodium?
Sodium's up top. I was trying to
Sodium
find.
5, yeah. So I mean, it's pretty good, honestly. And then it even has some branched chain amino acids in there too. Honestly, it looks pretty good. So kudos,
And
it might be
it
better.
tastes delicious. I like the strawberry and the lemon one.
Okay, yeah, well,
Lemon.
like LMNT doesn't taste bad, but like I said, like it's not. It tastes delicious, like if you're really thirsty after a workout because you're really thirsty. But
Yeah.
besides that, you're just like, this kind of tastes like little soft water with the flavor of watermelon or with strawberry or whatever. I know I'm not selling it, but I still, for me, I love it. But I might have to try this liquid IV now. Well,
Yeah,
cool.
try it.
All right. And so, all right. So last but not least, boy, I thought we were going to go through this faster than we did. All right. So Semaglutide, Ozempic, all this stuff, Tirzepatide, basically GLP-1 modifiers. So I have taken it actually, I'm actively taking it. Tomorrow will be week 6. And the reason I'm taking it is because I feel like probably 20% of my nutrition clients that I have, both online or in person, are on some form of it. And you can get it. So here's I'm going to talk about so you can get it, you can go to a doctor, you can get it prescribed, and you can also buy it as a research chemical. That is a gray area. Okay. Some people like the fact you can buy it as a peptide. Some people don't from a compounding pharmacy. There's pros and cons. All right. Obviously, I'm going to recommend you get a prescription from a doctor, and then you can go and source it wherever it is you want to source it from. So if you get it, let's say you get a prescription. So what I do is I get my prescription from Royal Men's Medical Center. Okay. Once I have my prescription, they want to charge me $750 for a 3-month, 2.5 milligrams, $750. Or I could go to a compounding pharmacy in Canada called Peptide Science, and I can get 3 milligram vial for $120, $110. Okay. So I have my dosage from the doctor. I know how much I need to take. He's written all that out. That's what I choose to not buy it from him. I get my prescription. I purchase that, so to speak. And then I purchase from a compounding pharmacy. Some people frown on that. Some people don't. That's personally what I do. Now, there's 3 big things that GLP-1s, okay, that's the family of peptides. Do not get caught up in the brand names. That is just pharmaceutical companies trying to put their patent spin on something, on a peptide, a branched chain amino acid, which is asinine in my opinion, okay? But ultimately, because they're a moneymaker, by the end of the year, that's what's gonna happen, unfortunately. But so what the 3 main things GLP-1s do is, one, it regulates your hormones, your leptin and ghrelin. You don't become as hungry, okay? And for most people who struggle with overeating, that alone is the biggest side effect. If you just aren't as hungry, you don't eat as much, and if you restrict your calories like you do when you log your food or whatever, guess what happens? You lose weight. Okay. The second thing that's really important is it makes you more sensitive, makes your insulin better. Basically, you're better able to regulate your blood sugar levels. So if you're someone like myself who's already relatively thin, but because you have a history of binge eating and being morbidly obese, my insulin levels are hyper responsive, and that's not good. So when I consume a little bit of sugar, my body immediately wants to go into fat storage mode. Semaglutide makes it, and it suppresses that. It's extremely beneficial, and I've gotten over this 5-6 weeks, I have gotten significantly leaner consuming the same amount of macronutrients, the same amount of calories, the same amount of protein, which honestly shocks me. Okay, and ironically enough, my sleep has dramatically improved. That is not something that's just something that I have noticed for me personally. I sleep way harder. And then the third thing it does is it makes the way how fast you digest food slower. So this it kind of the same thing like if you were a gastric bypass patient and your stomach was smaller, it kind of gives that same effect where you just don't feel as hungry because you kind of feel full because the food is digesting slower. Okay, those are the 3 things that it does that aid. And then trizepatide, which is a more powerful version of semaglutide, the only difference between it and semaglutide is its ability to regulate your blood sugar is exponentially higher. It's also exponentially more expensive. Okay, you have to take higher doses of it. And the other thing, I'm just going to rattle off some stuff because we're short on time. But if you have questions, hit me up at the end of this. The other thing, though, that you need to understand with GLP-1s is because it's a natural reoccurring substance, a peptide, a branched chain amino acid. Your body is going to get use of that substance, and it's going to produce less of a result. So what that means is basically what most doctors will do is you'll start out at X amount of substance, okay, 2.5 milligrams or whatever it is, and then you're going to take double it in week 4. In week 8, you're going to double that. And so they've done tests where people get up to 50 milligrams a week, which to give you an idea, I'm at 0.25 a week. But people they like doctors prescribe up to 15 milligrams a week. Okay. But they have to keep going up and up and up because the person's body just keeps adapting. I don't think long-term that's beneficial or necessarily say, although there's no evidence to say it's dangerous. I just don't think it's a good idea. So take that for what it's worth. A much better paradigm is instead of relying completely on the drug or the peptide, because the drug is kind of an iffy thing, is go 12 weeks on and 12 weeks off if you choose to use it. And what that does is you'll lose some weight. For us, most people lose about 15% of their total body weight. Whatever their body mass is, the average person loses 15%, which is crazy. But then if you don't have the habits built into that, if you aren't consuming enough protein, if you are doing resistance training, the vast majority of the weight that people lose, and this isn't going to come out for probably about 6 months to a year from now, vast majority of weight that people lose is muscle. Because your body's like, oh my word, this person's starving. All they're eating is trash. There's no macronutrients. And it's like, I'm going to save this fat because I'm going to need it to survive long term. Therefore, I'm going to burn this person's muscle, because if I burn my body's muscle, the amount of calories that I need goes down. Okay. Super bad, super harmful. Okay. So just that's a real short synopsis of semaglutide GLP-1s. But the biggest takeaway is if you do get on it and take it, is consuming 1 gram of protein, assuming you're able to, per pound of lean body mass is huge. Okay. And then in addition to that, it is almost essential to do some form of strength training, because that's going to force your body to retain its muscle. Okay. All right. Now that was kind of diarrhea of the mouth, questions, comments, concerns on any of that?
Have you been having any kind of digestive issues like bloating or gas or
That's
anything?
a good question. So the 2 side effects that they will list or talk about with semaglutide is nausea and diarrhea, or digestive, or actually not diarrhea. Sorry, that's with the carnivore diet. I don't know why I just thought that. Anyway, it's not diarrhea. The exact opposite, constipation. Okay, because it slows down your digestive tract. So the nausea, typically, and you inject this drug, by the way, there is an oral version, but I've not done the oral version, and I've only had one client who's done the oral version. But you inject it just like an insulin, just underneath your skin. What I've noticed is if I take it in the morning, typically about an hour, 2 hours later, if I haven't eaten anything, I do feel nauseous. So what best practices for that, for what people have done, is they take their injection right before they go to bed, and then they sleep through that. But as far as besides that, that's like the main negative side effect I have felt. Anything else? Well, awesome. Well, all right, people. Well, it was another fun and awesome Monday. All right. Well, once again, as always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, or stuff that you want us to talk about for next week, just hit us up. We'll put it on the to-do list, come up with the agenda, all that fun stuff. All right. If not, it is time to watch WWE Raw with Axel.
All right. Well, I'll see you there at your house, Kellen.
All right. Sounds good. Come on. All right. See you guys. Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.